It goes on more than anybody in our world wants to accept.
Now at 6, passing the trash, teachers accused of abuse showing up in different classrooms, how it's happening, and the push for accountability. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Sterling.
And I'm Susan Shaw. Off the top tonight, Michigan teachers accused of inappropriate conduct with multiple students have been able to find new jobs at other districts where the abuse can continue.
Target 8 investigator Byron Tollefson explains how it's been allowed to happen.
Brian and Sue, other states have already taken steps aimed to prevent this from happening. It's known as passing the trash, but Michigan has not. And victims' attorneys say the gap has allowed cycles of abuse to continue.
Teachers accused of abusing kids are being allowed to get jobs in new school districts where investigators say they continue to prey on children.
We're putting our kids at risk here.
James Baird was a part-time teacher, aquatics director, and swim coach at Allegan Public Schools between August 2005 and March of 2010. A civil lawsuit filed in June of last year by a former Allegan student and attorney, Ven Johnson, against the Allegan Public School District and 4 former school administrators says they knew as early as 2007 that multiple girls on the swim team had accused Baird of harassment and inappropriate conduct. Johnson says despite an internal investigation that year, he kept his job.
Public schools, private schools should do that on their own, but some don't. And when they do it, half the time, more than half the time in my experience, their investigations are an absolute joke.
According to the lawsuit, the district eventually fired Baird in March of 2010. Despite sexual harassment allegations from at least 4 girls, Baird was never criminally charged. Court records show Baird sued the district over his termination, which ended in a settlement in 2011.
As a part of that civil lawsuit, everybody agreed for confidentiality, and the whole thing gets broomed under the rug. And that's what we cannot allow to happen.
In a February 7th email, Allegan's current superintendent told Target 8 he can't comment on ongoing litigation, but he does not agree that Johnson accurately described the relevant facts and circumstances. In 2013, Baird was able to get a new job on the east side of the state, working as a vision specialist for schools in Garden City and Westland. There, investigators say the abuse continued. He has now been criminally charged with sexually abusing 4 girls who were visually impaired between 2018 and 2020. Prosecutors say 3 of the girls, then ages 8, 10, and 11, were blindfolded and then assaulted. Baird allegedly abused a then 8-year-old girl multiple times while he gave her vision tests. He could face decades in prison if convicted.
We have got to step up and plug these loopholes that allow people who are systemically hurting other people, but especially our children. We have got to step up and make sure that that can never happen again.
After the charges were announced in February, that school district, Livonia Public Schools, said when they hired Baird, they did a criminal background check, a reference check, and an unprofessional conduct check, and none of it brought up any misconduct.
That's what we should not allow to happen. It should be mandatory that that information be shared.
The Michigan Department of Education tells Target 8 when it comes to hiring, it is the school district's responsibility to do their own due diligence in performing background checks, including calling previous districts for references and information about their past. The Department of Education says under current law, teachers are only required to disclose convictions of felonies and misdemeanors to school districts and the Department of Education. Until there is a conviction, the Department of Education says it has no statutory authority to make termination decisions for school districts. Johnson says when there are allegations against a teacher, an investigation should immediately happen, and the results should permanently stay on the teacher's record.
So if and when they go to another district, whether it's in-state, out-of-state, whatever, that new entity who's taking this person under consideration has access to all of that information so that can be made a part of the decision-making process.
Other states have created their own laws to address this. In 2019, California extended the statute of limitations, giving survivors of childhood sexual abuse more time to report. Michigan is considering a similar step right now. A bill recently introduced by House Democrat Julie Brixey of Ingham County's Meridian Township would allow a sexual assault survivor to sue in civil court for damages until they turn 52.
The reason that we chose age 52 is because that's the average age that a survivor of child sex abuse comes forward to disclose their abuse.
Brixey's bill would also give survivors whose cases have already expired a 2-year window to sue for damages.
For far too long, Michigan's laws have harbored and shielded sexual predators by having our statute of limitation expire before anyone is able to come forward and understand and process what happened to them.
In New Jersey, in Republican Assemblyman Jay Weber's district, he says a teacher was caught molesting kids at 3 different schools. The first 2 times, Weber says the teacher agreed to resign, and the districts kept it confidential. Then
went to a private school, started molesting kids there, and finally they caught him, stopped him, and the parents of the private school students wound up suing the second school, saying, hey, you needed to disclose this, and they hadn't.
After that, Weber introduced a bill requiring applicants for school jobs to disclose all of their former schools or jobs with close contact with kids over the last 20 years. The district receiving the applications must contact those other districts and ask for personnel records, which they are required to provide. If the schools find something and decide not to hire the teacher and they get sued, they're protected under the law.
There were outrageous stories of child abuse that were preventable in our schools. There was a solution sitting there begging to be tried.
In 2018, the New Jersey Assembly and the Senate passed his legislation unanimously. It was signed into law that April. Since then, Weber says it's made a huge difference in protecting kids from abuse.
By and large, we're free of these stories that unfortunately Michigan is seeing now.
Weber calls it the gold standard for addressing the issue, and he hopes Michigan does the same.
I'd encourage them to look at our law, copy it if they want. You can take the whole thing. Listen, it's about protecting kids. I don't care if they're New Jersey or Michigan or wherever. Legislators in Michigan are going to take this story seriously. I'm sure they're very concerned about protecting the kids in Michigan from people like James Baird.
Weber also says it's important to protect innocent teachers, and if the allegations are found to be false, they should be wiped from their personnel record. Johnson's federal lawsuit against Allegan Public Schools is pending. James Baird is currently free on bond after pleading not guilty to several charges of criminal sexual conduct.